Hi guys, welcome to my channel. This video today will be one of the most useful videos for Nigerian international travelers. The reason is that the information is coming from the horse's mouth, that is, it is coming from the government directly, and it came out on the 3rd of October. It's a webinar organized by Nidcom with Dr. Sanni Aliu, who is always giving us information on COVID-19 and international protocols. Dr. Sanni Aliu is the coordinator of Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. So guys, stay tuned and watch this video to the end so you can get the full information.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this session with Dr. Aliu and Honorable Abike Dabiri-Erewa. We're going to just get started, and I'm just going to go ahead and introduce Honorable Abike Dabiri-Erewa, the Chairman CEO of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission. Welcome, Ma.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Aliu, thank you for agreeing to do this. And I welcome all participants to this forum. And the aim is basically to answer all your questions as it relates to the issue of particular Nigerians in diaspora traveling home. You recall that we've seen a few videos. There was a guy who was on Berekete Human Rights Radio crying that he was treated some way or the other, had to pay twice and all that. So there's been a few complaints, and Nidcom believes that it's all more about communication. And that's why today we decided to have a conversation with Dr. Aliu, National Coordinator of the PTF on COVID-19. Prior to now, we've received too many questions that we've been able to compile into frequently asked questions and answers, which Dr. Aliu will now take us through. Now, here's what will happen when Dr. Aliu is through with those questions that you have sent in. He already has them. Honorable Tara, our head of IT department in Nidcom, also has some questions that you have put in. Then we'll have some comments from some community leaders. Then we'll also take your questions through the chat as we're coming. So welcome to this session. I know that it will be very informative. And hopefully at the end of this, all your concerns would have been addressed by the National Coordinator. Over to you, Dr. Aliu, and thank you very much for agreeing to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It might be morning to some of you, so good morning. Thank you, Honorable Abike Dabiri, for inviting me, and thank you, Obina, for arranging this. I think this is an opportunity for us to really have a decent conversation and explain some of the things we've been doing in Nigeria. First of all, if I may introduce myself, so my name is Sanni Aliu. I'm currently the National Coordinator for the Presidential Task Force. Hello, apologies. I think my internet went off. So just to say, I'm a diasporan myself, and I very much appreciate some of the challenges you faced in the process of coming into Nigeria. I don't know whether Abike, did you get my initial points about my introduction?
Yes, that's why I said I got your initial points about your introduction. So the next thing now is, yeah, just continue from there. You can take it from there.
Thank you. So in terms of the travel arrangements, there are three reasons why we took some of the decisions we did. There were three things that we wanted to do. One was to limit the importation of COVID-19 into Nigeria. And that's the primary responsibility we have at the PTF, to reduce the number of cases that are coming in and also the number of transmissions that are going on. The second is to prevent transmission during flight. This is less of an issue for us. It's more of an issue for the airlines, particularly ICAO. The third is to limit or reduce the quarantine period that's necessary for people that come into the country. Because as all of us know, we visit families, etc. The last thing you want is to spend weeks upon weeks in Nigeria quarantine before you're able to do whatever brought you in. So those were the three reasons why we took some of the decisions we had to take. The travel portal itself has been running now for approximately 4 weeks. And during this period, we have brought in about 27,000 passengers, 18,000 through Lagos, 9,000 through Abuja. And the majority, only about 0.2% of these passengers have not had a COVID-19 PCR negative result on arrival. So 99.8% had a COVID-19 PCR result on arrival. The majority, specifically 85%, had no issues with the portal on coming in. And none at all. They were able to pay and they were able to clear the airport. 15% had problems with the portal, and this was sorted out in 12% of cases before they exited the airport. But I must say, if you have done everything you're supposed to do on the portal, clearing is very quick within a very short period of time. So I have, just to explain to you how the portal works, there are 3 sections to the portal if you go in. The first section is you fill in your health questionnaire. This is the very same paper copy health questionnaire that we used to give in the airlines on your way into Nigeria. So you fill it in. The next section is you upload your COVID-19 PCR test result. The PCR test result needs to be valid for at least 120 hours before you board. Now, we have been very generous. We started off with 96-hour validity. But because of the difficulties that people were having from the US or far-flung places in terms of being able to meet that 96-hour validity, we had to extend it to 120 hours. But the majority of countries that require arrival results have turnarounds of 72 hours. The reason why we have to shorten the time period between the time you have the test and the time you board is because we want as much as possible the result to reflect your current status in terms of your infectivity. And I'll give you an example. If you come in, let's say you do your test 24, 48 hours before you board and you're in the UK. On your way to the airport, you pick up COVID. When you arrive Nigeria, even though you have a negative PCR result, if you arrive Nigeria and we test you straight away, we would only pick up about less than 10% of cases that will seroconvert, having picked up the infection. If we delay that test until day 5, we'll pick up about 85%. If we delay that test until day 7, we will pick up about 96%. So the longer we delay testing up to the end of the incubation period, which is 14 days on average, the more likely we are to pick up a positive result. And indeed, when we look at the figures we have for Lagos, for instance, when we started this, we had 2,400 passengers that were tested for Lagos, 2,403. These were all passengers that had negative COVID-19 PCR tests before boarding. When they arrived Lagos at day 7, we tested them. 80 of them, 80, were positive with COVID. And this is just 2,400 passengers. We get between 5,000 to 7,000 passengers every day coming into Nigeria if we were to open all the airports. So you can imagine the number of new infections that we'll be importing. If we had tested those 2,400 on arrival, we would have only, it's very unlikely, we would probably have picked up only a fraction of those ones. And Lagos has put so much investment into their COVID response. Do you really think they would accept a situation where between 150 to 200 new cases potentially will be coming into Lagos every day? So we had to make that arrangement for testing. We didn't want to retest at day 14 because we've realized it's very difficult for people to quarantine or self-isolate for 14 days. So looking at my third aim, which was to limit or reduce the quarantine period, we realized, based on the incubation period and the advice from our technical teams as well, if we test at day 7, it's very likely it will reflect what will happen by day 14, because the majority would have been picked up. We would only be missing about 4%. So we said test at day 7. If you're negative by day 8, exit quarantine, end of story. And it's not hugely different to what other countries like Finland are doing, for instance. Finland are doing the same thing. The only difference is they test on arrival, and then they test more than 72 hours after arrival. And if you're negative, they allow you to exit, but not less than 72 hours. So it's not hugely different to what other countries are doing, and it enables people to exit. If we had a system where we can enforce quarantine and people will effectively quarantine, we don't even need these testing at all. Even if you come in with COVID, if you effectively self-isolate yourself, it's not going to be a major issue in terms of our numbers in the country. But sadly, we don't have that ability to enforce. And therefore, the only way we can make sure that travel is kept safe is by testing at day 7, making sure that people come in with a negative PCR result, and testing at day 7 to pick up those that are likely to come up with COVID pretty early on and isolate them.
Dr. Aliu,
now,
Dr. Aliu, just a minute. I need to come in here. We understand all that. Now, you need to have booked online, register online. For those who are not able to register online because the portal wasn't working, the challenge is when they return, when they get to Nigeria and try to pay or something at the airport, it's very, very stressful. I think that is the major thing. So I don't think people have a problem in doing the 7 testing, but the stress of when you arrive and what they go through at the airport. One, the portal sometimes does not work, and then they can't register online. And then when they arrive, there are challenges at the airport. Can you address those major issues before we move to the next set? So I don't think it's about doing the test on the 7th day,
yes,
but the stress of arrival, the portal not working, and then the issue of the labs and double payment and all that. I know you still move to that.
So, yes, so I'll move to that. Why don't I go through the questions? So I hope people have understood how the portal works. And again, Abike, just to stress, the portal works. For people who are not IT savvy, you could have challenges. And indeed, for all of us, we have challenges. My family left a week ago. The UK portal, it took me 2 hours to put 3 details on, 3 persons on. But the fact is, the portal itself is working. It is the only thing that would allow us to move from paper to electronic. All other countries have moved electronic, and Nigeria has to move electronic. And there are 2 systems on the portal. If you are not able to pay, you can still generate a barcode. It is that barcode that allows you to clear the airport very quickly. It's the barcode that allows you to clear very quickly, because if you have the barcode, even if you haven't paid, it's very easy to put your payment in. So we have, in the last 2-3 weeks, we had to put aside the mandatory presentation of the barcode because people were having problems downloading the barcode. It's now very straightforward. When you go in, you do step 1, health questionnaire. Step 2, you upload your PCR result. Step 3 is the payment. You can still upload the barcode without even going to the payment. And in the coming weeks, Abike, we will be making the barcode mandatory because it's the only way we can get rid of the paper side, so that we can follow and be able to track changes. But let me go through the questions and answers. I've got 20 of them, and I think they will answer most of the issues that people have. So the first one is, why do international travelers have to use the portal? And somebody was asking me, what is the portal? The portal we're talking about is the Nigeria International Travel Portal. And it's because Nigeria needs to move away from paper copies, we need electronic systems to be able to document, track, verify, and store accessible information. And with 5,000 to 7,000 passengers coming in every day, it is impossible to use hard copies. Abike, it's impossible. This system allows us to open the airports. And I can tell you, if we didn't have this system, we would still have been struggling to open the airports in late October. So it's a choice between opening up safely and having this system with some of the inconvenience that might be attached to it, or keeping the airport closed until such a time that the COVID response goes away. And there are countries that haven't opened up their airports. South Africa is only about to open now. A lot of countries throughout the world continue to have these restrictions because this is the new normal. So when should the pre-boarding COVID-19 test be done? It needs to be done 120 hours maximum before you board. At least we have extended it. Tests done more than 120 hours are not valid because it doesn't really tell you your true infectivity status at the time you arrive in Nigeria. We don't want to have a system where you test pre-boarding, test on arrival, and test at day 7. It's unnecessary. So that the test on arrival that we have put aside at the airports is in order for us to be able to have an alternative, which is testing before you leave. And that needs to be as close as possible to the time of arrival. When should I register on the travel portal? You are advised to begin your registration as soon as you get your COVID-19 negative PCR result, because that would enable you to go onto the system straight away and register. You can actually fill the health questionnaire, save it, and then when you get your COVID-19 PCR test, upload it and then do your payment. So you can register at any time, but preferably register at a time when you have your PCR result. So the other thing is my airport of departure and terminal option are not captured. So when you go onto the payment, it will come up with a choice of where you want to have the test done, and you choose where you want to have the test done. If your test is not, if the city that you're going to be in is not there clearly, then you will need to choose the city that is closest to you, or choose a lab that is closest to where you will be at day 7. Regardless of whichever lab you choose, it's the responsibility of that lab, if you have paid for them, to make sure that you are tested wherever you are in the country. Now, the other question is less to do with the diasporans, but are diplomats traveling into Nigeria required to provide a negative COVID-19 PCR? Yes. So everybody has to come in with a negative COVID-19 PCR test, regardless of who you are, whether you're a diplomat or not. There are exceptions when it comes to children. So when should the post-arrival COVID-19 PCR test be done? It needs to be done on the 7th day after arrival. The lab that you have paid into will contact you to schedule an appointment. They are all private laboratories. However, if you develop symptoms of COVID-19, you will need to continue self-isolating, and you contact the state emergency helpline or the NCDC helpline, and we will be providing information leaflets to passengers when they arrive. What is the testing process for international travelers arriving in Nigeria? So I've already addressed this. Travelers must conduct 2 PCR tests, 1 before boarding and 1 at day 7. And it is mandatory for you to continue to self-isolate until you get your negative PCR result by day 8. And if you develop symptoms, you need to let us know early. So what do you do if it takes 7 days to get the results in the country of departure? Well, I'm afraid if you're going to come into Nigeria, you need a COVID-19 PCR test valid within 5 days. If you're unable to get it, our advice is you get in touch with the private laboratories in the countries where you reside. PCR tests really do not take a long period of time. We've accommodated by extending from 72 hours, which most countries have, to 120 hours. We cannot extend this any longer because it will not reflect your true status at the time you come into the country. So why are international travelers required to take a repeat PCR test? I've already explained this right from the beginning. How much does the repeat PCR test in Nigeria cost? So the costs vary depending on where you're going to have the test, the specific city portal you choose. This is because the state governments are responsible for testing in their areas. They are the ones that negotiate with the private laboratories what the cost will be. So, for example, for Kano, it's now 36,000 naira. For Abuja, It used to be 42,400 or 42,500 or so. We've been able to bring it down to 39,500 now, with more labs coming on board. Lagos is 50,400. The cost will continue to come down as more and more laboratories come onto the portal. And it's your choice in terms of which laboratory you want to choose. But inevitably, over time, we would expect the cost of these tests to continue to come down. But PCR tests have always been expensive. They are not antigen-based tests and will continue to be expensive until such a time that we have rapid tests available. Just to clarify, the federal government does not receive any of the money that you pay into the private laboratories. The state, this is an arrangement between the state governments and the private labs. The public laboratories are not allowed to do travel testing. Why? Because we cannot afford to run a public health system and at the same time cater for travelers. The number of passengers we have is too high for us to be able to afford to provide free testing. And indeed, for most countries, traveling is a personal pursuit and the testing is charged. I know it is charged in parts of Europe, it is charged in the UK, and it's not something that the government can afford because of the number of passengers we have. At the moment, we test in Nigeria between about 2,000 to 2,500 tests every day. If we are to include the passenger testing, this will go up to about 7,500 tests a day. And it will not be affordable because we will run out of our kits that are supposed to be used for public health testing for cases. So one of the challenges, the other question is, can I pay with a Naira credit card? One of the challenges people have with payment is where you have an international card and you choose the Naira option. And our advice is, if you have an international card, use the dollar option. If you have a Naira card abroad, you can use the Naira option for payment. We are in the process of getting additional payment platforms, including PayPal, so that it will be easier for people with international cards to be able to use their credit cards. But even if you do not pay, you can still upload the QR code, because the QR code is what gives us the electronic versions of your health questionnaire and the electronic version of your COVID-19 PCR negative result. So for instance, if you happen to be positive at day 7, we need to be able to go back and check your COVID-19 PCR test that you've uploaded and check and see, is it genuine? Is it a PCR test, or could it have been an antigen test, etc.? We will not be able to do that if you handed over a hard copy, because we have a room. We already have a room full of paperwork for health questionnaires, a whole room in the airport. And nobody will be able to go through those paperwork in order to be able to retrieve your hard copy. And that's why we need the QR code. We need you to go onto the portal, use the portal, even if you cannot pay, download your barcode, and it will make life easier when you land in Nigeria. So what is the procedure for short trips less than 7 days? Well, I'm afraid there's nothing like short-term visit to Nigeria anymore. If you are coming into Nigeria, you self-isolate for 7 days, whatever you will be doing. So if you have any plans for short-term visits, our advice is, if you are coming in as a business visitor, etc., you need to make arrangements to make sure that the number of days you spend is 7 days plus. Otherwise, you might as well just do Zoom calls, etc., or virtual meetings as an option. But certainly, you have to self-isolate. It's no different to other parts of the world that have longer day incubation periods. Is the testing required for children? So we've exempted children below the age of 10. When should passengers with long layovers carry out their pre-boarding test? So we're looking into this, but that's why we extended the validity period for the PCR from 96 hours to 120 days, because we hope that it will accommodate people with long layovers. So the other question is, if you come into Lagos or Abuja, do you have to stay in Lagos or Abuja for the 7 days of your self-isolation? No. If you're moving on to Port Harcourt or you're moving on to Maiduguri, you can still go ahead. We are working very closely with the states. We've just added 6 more states to the portal. And we're trying as much as possible to get private laboratories across the country so that it will be more convenient for passengers to be tested wherever they are. But as I said, if you pay to a lab, we are insisting that the laboratories sort out your sample collection wherever you are in the country. And we've allowed the states to make accommodation for their logistics to make sure that this is possible. So how do I correct the information already provided? So if you have provided information on the portal and you need to change it, then you can send an email. There's additional information on the travel portal where you can send us additional travel information. Some of the complaints we get has to do with receiving an error message by passengers saying duplicate records when they are trying to upload onto the portal. The main reason for this is because you've already registered. So if you register, you're in the process of doing your health questionnaire, you finish your health questionnaire, you save, and then you get interrupted, you go away. You don't need to start the process all over again. It's already saving on the portal, because if you try entering your information all over again, it will come up with a duplicate record. So it means the system has received and stored your information, and you don't need to go back right from the beginning. All you need to do is to enter your passport and your nationality and the date, and it will come up with where you stopped. And the same thing as well with payment. You can defer payment until just before you travel. All you need to do is you go in, log on again, select the make payment module to retrieve your data already captured, and you go ahead to pay. Another question has to do with the QR code. So let's say you do everything, you pay, and you forget to print out your QR code. You can still go back onto the portal and access the barcode and print it out quickly. And just to say, for people who have done everything on the system, Abike, it takes minutes to clear at the airport, minutes, honestly. And we've had, just as much as we've had a lot of complaints about the portal, we've also had a lot of compliments. We've had colleagues, we've had people coming back from abroad saying that our portal actually works compared to what's happening in other countries, particularly in Africa, where there's very little being set up, maybe because of they don't have the resources to do that. And even in Nigeria, Abike, the portal, if not for the private sector, we wouldn't have gotten this far. It would have taken us much, much longer to do so. But we were able to work through the Coalition Against Coronavirus Disease with GT Bank, Access, the Dangote Foundation, and a part of the oil sector. And they were the ones that supported the setting up of the portal, because for the business community, it was in their best interest for the international airports to open up. And I can recall when the airports were closed, there was as much problem for people in the diaspora. In fact, there was more, because the option here, Abike, is you wanted to travel. There will be some inconvenience during the COVID pandemic, there's no doubt, but at least we've opened things up. We've allowed you to travel in a more safer way. The people that you have within the cabin in the airlines, they've all been tested and they are COVID-19 PCR negative. So you have some comfort that the person you're sitting with by your side who is not wearing a mask and you're eating and chatting with is not infectious at the time they board. And when you arrive in Nigeria, we from our own side, from our own responsibilities, we have made sure that we have limited the risks. You cannot eliminate it altogether, but we've mitigated the risk of additional importations coming in. And if they do come in, we have a system by testing later on, a week later after arrival, to pick up those that have the disease fairly early on before they transmit it to others. So it's an option that we have, because the other option is not to open the international airports and just leave it closed, but it will be detrimental to our economy. It will harm our businesses, and it will not allow people from the diaspora to be able to travel, as well as other travelers as well. So the other issue, the last question, I think, has to do with the issue of failed payment. And this is what has generated the most angst. And what I wanted to say is, if you are charged more than twice, there's a system that would allow you to be refunded. The gentleman who came back from Canada, The issue was he couldn't get to the right people, but we've now set up a customer support center. We've set up additional support at the airport. We are providing additional information leaflets. And if you pay, you now have a transaction code that will come to you in the same way that if you pay for any other bank transaction that you can use to approach a lab. And we've told the labs, even if they haven't received confirmation of your payment, if you have the transaction code that will show clearly that you have paid to so-so lab at so-so date, this amount, they will have to take your sample and they can sort it out later. So the delays in payment verification reaching the labs is already being solved. We have training already underway today where the administrators, the senior managers in the laboratories will now have admin access to the portal. So they can go into the portal and check for payments. So there shouldn't really be any issues with regards to verifying payments. But overall, the portal, to summarize what I'm trying to say, the portal is working. 85% of passengers have no problem with this. The small percentage that have a problem with it is sorted at the time of arrival. People do not need to be afraid of using the portal or coming into Nigeria for their businesses and family visits, etc. We are trying as much as we can to make your experience, your travel experience, pleasant. But just like in any other part of the world, this is COVID. There will be inconveniences attached to it. And I am pleading with people that are traveling to use the portal. Even if you cannot pay, download your barcode. It will enable us to have electronic versions of your health questionnaire, electronic versions of your COVID PCR result. If you don't, in the coming week, we will make it mandatory for the QR code to be available to airlines before people travel. So this is the only way we can move on to an electronic version. We have customer support available, and we will be very happy to continue to receive feedback from you. But the portal, I'm afraid, has come to stay. It's the only way that we can enable our airports to operate safely and to increase the number of flights. We've just increased the flights coming into Lagos today. We were having only 4 flights. We've increased the flights to 7. We will now have 2,500 passengers coming into Lagos. We are keeping Abuja at around 1,300, 1,400. But that means that we are now accommodating 50% capacity. We used to accommodate a 20 to 30% capacity. And finally, just to re-echo again, looking at just the first 2,400 persons that we've tested since we started this system. At day 7, we've picked 80 passengers with COVID. These are people that we would have missed if we hadn't tested them at day 7. If we had tested them at day 1 on arrival, we would have missed up to 90% of them. So that in itself is further confirmation that we have to do the testing. And it allows people to exit. You can stop isolating at day 8. Whereas if we don't do the testing, the only option we have will be to quarantine or self-isolate you for 14 days. And even then, we don't have any certainty that you're actually self-isolating. You might be going around and you will end up with COVID. This is a temporary situation. COVID will go away eventually, but we need to make sure that the amount of work we have put into the country's response is we are not dragged back again, as we can see with some of the issues that are now cropping up in Europe, possibly linked to tourists, etc. Over to you, Abike. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Some questions are coming in the chat. Number 1, can you share the portal with everybody? The portal at the.
Yes. So I will type it. I'll type it in because we do have concerns. We've been told that people are trying to set up something very similar. I will just type it in, and it should come up. It's https .//nitp.ncdc.gov.ng.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Then again, when are you likely to have this rapid testing? We can't find you on the web.
Yes, so good question. So the antigen test, the rapid test, they are all based on the presence of protein on the surface of the virus. The ones that have been validated so far have been shown to have much lower sensitivity than the PCR test. In fact, the two that are likely to come out, of which one is one of those that the WHO have just placed on the EUA, is going to be licensed only for people with significant symptoms. Because think of it, if a test is not very sensitive, like the antigen test, you need to be excreting a lot of the virus in order to have a positive result. So it's going to be licensed only in situations where people are very symptomatic, which will be mostly in the clinical facilities, the hospitals, when people present with fever, cough, respiratory symptoms, etc. The WHO, in fact, have made it very clear that it shouldn't be used for low-risk populations, including travelers, because you're going to miss a large chunk of them, In the US, they use a lot of the antigen tests, and apart from the US, in other parts of the world, we know that the sensitivity is around 60, max maybe 70% in the field, when you compare it with PCR. So you'll be missing about 3 to 4 out of every 10 confirmed cases of PCR. As far as we're concerned, we are continuing with the PCR test until such a time that we are very confident that an antigen test that can provide similar results to a PCR is available. But at this point in time, I'm afraid we don't have that luxury.
Okay, thank you very much. A lot of questions are coming on in the chat, and I think you've addressed some of them.
Yes, I have.
I think you've addressed virtually everything. Yes.
Yeah.
For those of you who have the portal address, you just typed it out now, so you can thank you there. So, Honorable Tara, where are you? There are some questions we can't find Honorable Tara.
Okay, so just to clarify, so for my family, I was using the UK portal to get them back to the UK. And it took me more than an hour to put the details for 3 persons. And even though there was no payment, and I was quite familiar with the uk.gov.ng site, having lived in the UK for more than 20 years, but nevertheless, it was quite challenging for me to fill in their details. So what I'm trying to say is, across the board, countries require these electronic formats. We are no different. If you are unable to pay, you will not be penalized in terms of boarding, just because you cannot pay. When you come into Nigeria, it will be inconvenient for you, certainly. But what we are most interested in is you need to be able to upload your documents so that we can stop this silly thing of having hard copies that cannot be of any use and that are environmentally unfriendly.
Okay, thank you very much. Obina, I think you've addressed virtually everything on the chat, but they are still asking for the portal address. Does it vary from country to country? Somebody's asking, because you just said you use it. So it's the same. So can you just write it out again?
So I'll write it out again, but I will also say, if people search for NCDC, they can actually access the site through NCDC. But it's NITP, Nigeria International Travel Portal .ncdc.gov.ng. And of course, it's HTTPS to show that it's a secure site.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, can we get some of the diasporans, the chairman, Nigel Americas, Obed, are you there? I'll hand over to Obina to get the people that will be just making a few remarks. And if there's any more to add, I think you've virtually answered all the questions. So Obina,
Obina.
Yes, can we have Mr. Obed, Mr.
Yes,
Liu?
they're coming on right now.
Please make it very brief.
Gentlemen, please proceed. And Mr. Lewis, please go ahead. Please unmute.
Good evening, everyone. May I say thank you to Dr. Sanni Aliu, and a big thank you to Honorable Abike Dabiri-Erewa, the Chairman, CEO, Nidcom. We know that I'm Mobolaji Lewis, and I'm the chairman of Nigerian think tank group worldwide, and a committee member of the NDIS 2020, that's Nigerian Diaspora Investment Summit. We actually appreciate all the things PTF has been doing. In fact, one of the things we looked at, and which you have pointed out, is the fact that the challenge is balancing public health against private pursuit of travel. We know that this can be very challenging, but what we have seen in general is a vacuum of information. Information is not available. So these are areas that needs to be identified and maybe taken more seriously so that people can actually have the information readily available. That is very key. Also, we need to look at QC, quality checks on the diagnostic centers, on the test centers, because how do you determine that they're actually doing the right thing? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the vacuum in information, we've actually been discussing this, and you're quite right, because we have provided a request to all the airlines to make sure that the links are available when people buy tickets to Nigeria. We've also linked up with the embassies to provide additional information to the embassies. But moving forward, we do have quite an active media team. We will link up with the Nigeria Diaspora Commission so that we can make sure that the necessary information goes to you guys and can be disseminated. I think the Google search engine for the portal isn't brilliant. Ideally, it should come up with a genuine site straight away. But as I said, a lot of people are trying to duplicate the site because there's payment involved, and maybe that's why it's not as visible. But certainly, from our own side, we have put in a lot of energy, particularly working with the private sector. This is primarily a joint initiative with the private sector. As I said, if it was just the public sector, we probably would still be struggling to open the airports. But we very much appreciate the challenges that Nigerians are going through when they are coming in. Travel in itself is stressful. It certainly is stressful to me. Talk less of having to fill a form electronically, etc., and put in payment. But the message I want to put out is it's not necessarily the payment that we get really concerned about. It's this inability for people to move from a hard copy to an electronic format when the rest of the world are doing so. And it has to happen in Nigeria. And that's why I keep on saying the portal has come to exist. And we need to get familiar with it. And if there are issues, we need to know those issues early so that we can sort it out. The private sector have been really helpful in this regard. We have made a lot of changes since we started. And I'm pleased to say 85% is a large number of people being able to come in and pay, etc. But the PTF has a lot of other priorities in addition to travel, and we really want this to be sorted out as soon as possible so that we can concentrate on schools and other issues that have been cropping up. The PTF will be rounding up at the end of December, so whatever we set up needs to be able to be sustained moving forward without the PTF necessarily being involved.
So that will become the norm. That will become the norm. So we
absolutely.
Okay, before we move to Mr. Obed, two questions here. When there are distress calls, what happens? Who answers them? Is there adequate provision for distress calls? And then how frequent is the portal put to test or tested so as to ensure that it's always functional? Can you address those two questions while we now call Mr. Obed?
Yes, so we actually have a technical team that is derived from the private sector that are working on the portal 24/7, dealing with the issues as they crop up. And as I said, we've also set up a sort of a customer support center. For people arriving in Nigeria, there will be information leaflets that they will be given that goes through the system in terms of how to get tested, etc. And also who to contact if you have an issue. The gentleman, for instance, that came from Canada, if he had gotten in contact with the right person, whether it's somebody from the portal or from NCDC or from my team, it would have been sorted straight away. In fact, the day the viral video went out, that same day he was refunded his money. That same day, whereas it was taking him ages going round and round and round in circles. So we have that. There's no IT system that doesn't start with difficulty. In fact, I think we did very well with this portal because we didn't even pilot it, Abike. We had no time to pilot it. We had to just get it out because we wanted to open the airports. And of course, the PTF is a committee. It's not just me being convinced that this is the right thing to do. It's also me convincing the other members on the committee and everybody being on board that we have done whatever we can to mitigate the response. I remember Lagos State government, when we were opening up, they sent us data. They sent us data on people who had come in with the previous system we had. There was a particular flight where 40% of the passengers, 40% were positive when we tested them. 40%, and they said, you cannot drag us back. We spent over 15 billion naira sorting out our COVID problems in Lagos. You cannot then be we can't be bringing in 100, 200 new cases every day into Lagos. The state government will not take it, the federal government will not take it, and therefore we have to make sure whatever we put in place provides that confidence that things are being done to mitigate the risk for the country. But we very much appreciate the difficulty people are going. It's difficulty that would eventually, even now as I speak, is being solved to a large extent. It's really the minority of people that will have challenge. If it's a challenge of payment, it will be sorted, but there's no challenge at the moment in terms of the QR code. It's the barcode we really need people to work with, and we will be making it mandatory in the coming weeks. But we don't want to make it mandatory and we start having complaints that people are being denied boarding. So that's why we want the diasporans to be aware of this and to take it as a routine, because it's something that will continue to be there for months to come until this COVID pandemic is over. And we don't know when it's going to be over. Maybe a year, 2 years, who knows?
Okay, Obed.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Sanni Aliu, the coordinator of Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. And thank you, our Madam, Honorable Abike Dabiri, the Chairman, CEO of Nidcom. We're very appreciative of having the opportunity to talk to the relevant authorities in a very short notice. That's really the Nidcom living up to his expectation of coordinating diaspora concerns to the relevant authorities in Nigeria. Yes, with the issue in discussion, the diaspora is not really happy with the policy in discussion because personally, I've not had first-hand information, but going through what has been written and video clips on the internet, it calls for a great concern that the diaspora should engage, talk to the relevant authorities and know what this is all about. So as at now, I'll have to speak at a high level because, like I said earlier, I've not traveled, so I don't have a first-hand information. As at now, I had plans to come to Nigeria in December to bring back my son, born and bred here in US, but he's in Nigeria for his youth service. I had plans to do that, but I've not mustered the courage to do that just based on what I'm reading on the internet. For me, is discouraging. And the reason why I'm bringing my son into it is that, okay, my son is a complete American, but he's more Nigerian than most people. And he loves Nigeria, but if he's gonna travel and come to the airport and have this experience over and over and over and things like that, don't you think that they will be discouraged? So I just want to talk on the behalf of the diaspora so that, when these kind of policies are being made, to think inwards and see how is it going to affect the diaspora? Because in my opinion, Nigerian diaspora is very crucial to our economy, to our well-being, to our socio-economic well-being in Nigeria. I mean,
Mr. Obed, sorry. I think that is the essence of having this. And if you listen to Dr. Aliu, he had actually tackled that. Since you didn't have the first experience, but as chairman of Nidcom Americas, I think you've spoken generally speaking. And he has also said, don't be afraid. Your son needs not be afraid. There are people who've had good experiences, some have had bad experiences, and that is why we're here. And I think he has explained all those issues. So I don't want to also deviate from.
No, I have a last request. I have a last request, madam. My request is this from the diaspora. You know, going forward, when policies that you know the diasporas are involved, how appropriate will it be that the appropriate authority gets with the diaspora to Nidcom, so that diaspora will be part of formulating the implementation of such policies instead of us reacting as we are doing now. We are just being reactionary because we don't like what is happening. How in the future can the diaspora be integrated in such policy making? Because again, Nigerian diaspora is very crucial to our socio-economic well-being in Nigeria.
Okay, your point is noted.
Yes.
And
if I may respond, can I respond quickly?
Yes, please.
So thank you for your comments. Well, first of all, negative news makes news. If 99% of those using the portal are satisfied and 1% have a terrible experience, it's that 1% that you're going to hear of, okay? As I keep on saying, the majority of people don't have a problem with this portal. Of course, there are challenging issues for the minority, which we are in the process of sorting out. And to a large extent, we have. So for instance, if you pay and you go to a lab and they don't have your records, which was what happened to the Canadian chap, now you will get a transaction detail and the labs have been told to deal with you, take your samples and then sort out their system later on. So we are working on this. Secondly, the issue of diasporans. I can tell you, I'm a diasporan. I've been in the UK for 22 years. I have families that travel to and fro. I'm just as diasporan as any of you. The majority of the people working in my secretariat have links with the external world. They are not civil servants. So some of the decisions we take are decisions that as much reflect our need in the diaspora. I'll be back in the UK by Christmas. I live in the UK. So I understand your issues very well. I don't think we would have had a different situation if the PDF had gone through to the diasporans and asked them, what do you think we should do? Because some of us have already been there and continue to be there anyway. We are aware of the challenges. We are working on this. And I think it's not everything, every video that you see that you should take as the gospel truth or say that this is what is happening across the board. Thousands have come in, 27,000 we've cleared in the last 4 weeks. 27,000 people that would not have come into Nigeria if we hadn't placed this system in to be active. And I really don't think there's an easier alternative to this. We have tried to accommodate the quarantine to shorten.
But certainly there's very little we could have done differently at this point in time to allow us to open up quickly. But if the alternative is for people to continue to struggle to come in because our airports are closed, then that's the other alternative, which we don't want, because we all want to be able to travel freely. So please, let's continue to talk, let's continue to converse, but at the same time, let's realize that it's not the entire portal that is ineffective or non-functional. And we have received as many compliments as complaints. In fact, more compliments than complaints. Over to you, Abby.
Thank you very much. We'll call on Mr. Wale, but in the meantime, somebody says, when will the PayPal option be functional? And then they want more information from the missions. Now we will get the leaflet from you and share on our website and ensure we share to as many diaspora groups as possible. So that's a question for you, but you can take that after Mr. Wale. Then somebody here says, Victoria says she had a first-hand experience and that she had no problem whatsoever. Why some said, you know, like just admit with you that maybe a percentage have problems. Now, Mr. Wale, I know you were very vocal about this. Over to Olawale.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sanni Aliu, for the presentation. And Honorable Abike Dabiri in particular, from always being proactive, not reactional. I am a typical example of passing message across to you, and swiftly you've been taking care of them, and most especially taking care of our concern at this critical period, bringing this close to the people. My name is Olawale Oditoye. I'm the coordinator of Legacy Initiative International CIC UK here. I must say more grease to your elbow. The only thing I would like to add, Dr. Aliu, if you could add to the customer service portal, the question and answer, which would be a kind of interactive between whoever that wants to use it, rather than making calls, please. Otherwise, you're doing a wonderful job. Thank you so much.
Mr. Wale, somebody just said you ask your question and stop praising it. But we enjoy the praises. Thank you. Okay.
If I may, can I comment? So the PayPal, there were issues with the PayPal. That was why it's still not up yet. And in addition to PayPal, we are also looking at other payment portals to make it easier for people to use international cards. And we have a meeting with the technical committee tomorrow evening. I think the advice regarding the interactive question and answer, maybe what we should have on the portal actually is it's a system that allows people to type in their comments, just like we are having here, and we have somebody getting back to them with answers to their queries, rather than having just telephone numbers, etc. We do have an email that goes to NCDC, and I know it's a major part of their job every day to answer the emails, but maybe if it's public facing, it will allow people to see the answers to the questions that they may have as well. And the questions and answers that I have gone through today, I'll make sure that it goes onto the travel portal so that people have access to it. We already have a section with information. Over to you, Abike.
Okay. Also, it's also been suggested I should put a chat. Okay, that's what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, chat box.
Which I think is very, very, very fine. Okay, Honorable Tara, can you? Let's go through the questions you have.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doctor, and thank you everyone for this very important interactive session. I think most of the questions are the ones that are key have been answered, but I think there is one that I find particularly important, maybe from the scientific point of view. What are the probabilities that passengers will be infected in flight, despite all the COVID-19 protocols established at both ends? Because it does appear that people have already been tested and they've been certified to be negative. And that is the assumption that everybody that boards the plane is assumed to be negative. Are there possibilities that people get to be infected on board the flight?
Yes. So as I said, with infection control, you cannot eliminate risk altogether. You can only mitigate it. And that's the reason why we keep on harping on the 72-hour validity. As close as possible you have your test, the more likely it is to reflect your infectiousness status when you board the flight. So for instance, if you look at the incubation period for COVID, it's between 2 days to 14 days. But most people, it's a bell-shaped curve. Most people will become symptomatic around day 7. So if you were to catch COVID, or if I was to catch COVID rather than you, I will become symptomatic in 7 days, about 7 days from now. So if I did the test if I did the test much earlier, the likelihood is it will be negative, but I will go into the plane infectious. And that's why it goes beyond just the airlines looking at the test result you have, but also looking at you, whether are you coughing, do you have a fever, do you have respiratory symptoms, etc., and making sure that they don't board people. The biggest risk to me is really those on long-haul flights. And it's been shown, there have been studies that have shown clear transmission to passengers, but especially long-haul flights where people take off their masks in order to eat, they converse with each other. You're sitting close to somebody who is infectious, coughing and spluttering, and almost certainly you could catch it. But overall, the risk is really low. Generally speaking, travelers, passengers are considered to be low risk when it comes to transmission, because most of them would have been, the moment you are screened and you're tested, and at the same time you don't have symptoms, etc., you're less likely to be infectious, because it's not the entire period of COVID that you have that you will be infectious. It's usually 2 days before the onset of symptoms and up to 3 days after. And beyond that, your infectivity status really drops significantly. But overall, what I would say is people should be comfortable that the aviation industry is doing a lot to prevent transmission. And I think most of the things that they have put in place, because the testing before boarding, the push for testing before boarding is actually being done mostly by the airline. If it was us in Nigeria, we could have put in place infrastructure to test on arrival at the airport, rather than asking people to test before boarding. But the advantage of testing before boarding is at least you have cleared all those that could potentially have COVID that would have entered the cabin, and also stopped them from arriving in Nigeria. So in other words, you've already gotten rid of the majority of those with issues, and you're only dealing with the less likely ones. But overall, okay. I don't think I travel frequently, and to be honest, I'm not too worried, provided I use my mask, I gel my hands, and I observe all those non-pharmaceutical interventions that we always advise. You should be okay. You should be okay.
Okay. The concern largely is from the point of view of cost for travelers. Having this test on both sides. Of course, some are suggesting why not the federal government, especially it may not have crossed your minds, but especially with regards to Nigerians who are in the diaspora, that these private laboratories, it's not that they shouldn't conduct the test, but the cost should somewhat be hugely or highly subsidized based on, from the thinking of people, the resources that are available, so that they can actually subsidize this cost for our own diasporas, wherever they are taking this. Because what is important here is that their data is captured at the airport. They have the QR code, which means it is certified that they actually came into the country through a particular airport, and they've passed through certain screens. So which means their data is available. This reduces the possibility of fraud or whatever in that regard. But the issue is they do this test at huge cost, maybe from the UK or in any other country. And then by the time they land here, they are now made to do the same thing. Let me put a follow-up to that. Already, the chairman, Nidcom, has already raised this issue, but I think it's very, very important that we re-echo it. The responses to distress calls. What happened previously, of course, especially with regards to the viral video, is this issue of responses to distress calls. And I must really say that the complaints in that regard is the major issue about the kind of how professional it is to respond to people who make the calls, and then how effective it is to respond to the issues that are raised itself. And then let me just totally up all together. Then we've talked about how frequent the portal is being put to use, but that's not the issue. The issue is that where the portal fails, what are the backup mechanisms that will ensure that the person who wants to be served gets alternatives without necessarily having to insist or waiting on the portal? Because we all know that most of these portals technically have load-bearing capacities. So at the time one is trying to log in, probably there are issues about space or data or storage capacities that cannot accommodate additional people from getting into the portal. And then in case there are issues, because there are sometimes problems where the portal itself may have technical malfunction and it may not actually be understood until much later. I'm talking, I'm saying this because of my background in that field. So I believe there should be alternatives or backup mechanisms where the portal fails. Is there any such mechanism put in place? Because effectively the major problem we can now see is, of course, like you've rightfully pointed out, 99% could be successful. But where communication is not effectively put in place, one, to mitigate and to provide effective communication to people in case there are such malfunctions. And then two, when the communication is not adequate enough, then all these problems will come up. Thank you.
So thank you. Very specific comments. Abike, can I quickly answer them?
Okay.
So I will start with a more controversial one, the issue of whether government should subsidize. So the main reason why we can't, as I said earlier on, is really the number of passengers we get into Nigeria. It's nothing compared to Ghana or other countries. As I said, we get between 5,000 to 7,000 passengers when we fully open the airports every day for testing, for that come into the country, and a slightly smaller number that go out. The tests that we do, at the moment, we've done just over 500,000 tests. The tests are very expensive. We all know public PCR tests are very expensive. Even in Nigeria and the developing countries set up, they are expensive. At any point in time, we probably have maybe 300, 400,000 test kits available. The majority of these test kits are donated by our donors. We have some that we have bought. We are in the process of buying about another 500,000 or so. But if we were to take up the travel testing, we will run out of test kits in no time, believe me, because we will be tripling the number of tests we are doing every day. It is not sustainable. And even in developed countries like the UK, for instance, yes, you do testing and it's free under the NHS, but it's not for travel purposes. The moment you say travel, they would ask you to go private. We've had colleagues that have paid £250 for a test in the UK before coming in from the private sector. We are trying to push the cost of PCR as much as we can down for the private laboratories. But one of the things that we have said to the private labs is they will not be allowed to double dip. They cannot serve the public sector and also serve the travel. They have to do it only within the travel sector side. And the more laboratories we have coming onto the portal, the easier it will be to push down the cost. And we will push down the cost. I'm very confident that eventually the cost will come down. But at the moment, it's remember, if unless we open up properly, even the cost of the tickets themselves will continue to be expensive. At the moment, KLM is not flying, Lufthansa is not flying, Air France are not flying. They are not flying because of issues related around the COVID pandemic, etc. So even the cost of the tickets themselves will be quite expensive and will be over and above any cost that you will be charged for coming into Nigeria to have a COVID test at day 7, which at the moment is about it's less than $100. On average, Lagos is the only one charging 50,000. The rest are all charging between 36,000 to 39,000. And it will continue to come down, so less than $100 per thing. And even Lagos, I'm very confident that we'll be able at some point to bring it down. So yes, we would love to subsidize, but I'm afraid it's not sustainable, even for the public health side. We're just about to test corpus, 85,000 of them. We are having to look for the test kits in order to do this massive exercise. We cannot divert these precious kits to travelers in a situation where we're getting up to 5,000 people coming in every day. It's impossible. And then if we do it for those that are coming into the country, we have to do it for free for those that are going out. So I'm afraid it's a non-starter for the country. It's not affordable, and it's certainly something that we could have done for a few weeks or a month or two, but we cannot do it for a longer period of time. In terms of the backup mechanism, I just wanted to say, when we started off the issue of the QR code, so when people finish with the portal, they are supposed to get an email of the QR code back. And we realized that those with Yahoo accounts, Yahoo was spamming the return email. So all those with Yahoo accounts were having difficulty getting the QR code. We then designed a system where you go in, as you finish everything, you click a button and the QR code pops up on your screen and straight away you print it. So that's one of the backup mechanisms we've had. Since then, we've also included a system that where you have a completely different email, HTTP, where you go in afterwards and you type it in, safer portals, and it takes you to a different site where you can generate your barcode. if you are having difficulty with the main travel portal. So we do have a backup, but as I said, we didn't even have time to trial this, the portal. We had to just open up, and we are improving things as we go along. In terms of response to distress calls, absolutely right. That's why we're setting up the customer service center. Dealing with customers, it's important that we try as much as possible for the labs to understand that the customers are their main. They need to provide a good service. And for labs that are not providing a good service, we will penalize them. There's a lab already in Lagos that has come off the portal. There's another lab that has been having most of the complaints that we get, maybe because they deal with most of the passengers that come into the country, and we're working very closely with them. And if we are unable to resolve the issues, we will ask them to come off the portal. There are implications for people who misbehave, and I will please ask if there are issues with either forgery or illegal acts, just let us know, and we will take action straight away. These labs, we can penalize them. If they are not on the portal, they cannot do travel business at all. So there are ways around this. And in terms of addressing the quality assurance side, all the labs that are on the portal undergo the NCDC quality assurance process. We are also going to standardize the laboratory results for those that are leaving the country, so that it will be standard, and there will be something on the certificate that will be make it very clear that it hasn't been forged, because we see forgery not only in Nigeria but also in passengers that are coming from outside. But we do appreciate the challenges. It's not easy setting up a system, an IT system. IT systems are not perfect in the same way that humans are not perfect either. And I think the more we can work together to resolve some of these issues, the better, because we really need from the PTF side to move on and start addressing other parts of the response, not just the international travel side.
Thank you very much. Before we call on Mr. Tony Isima, Bobo Lukoya says we should do a 90 seconds video stating the processes. We can work with you on that. And people want to know, I think you mentioned when all the airports will be open. For instance, Port Harcourt International Airport, those traveling there. So I hand over to Mr. Isima. Your quick comments, please. We can't hear you.
Hello.
Okay,
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Madam Abike, and hello, Sanni.
Hey, how are you, sir?
Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
I just have a short comment, and first off is to commend the work that the country and the PTF has done so far. And it's tough, it's a tough one in our environment. But there seems to be some lag on leadership in the health and medical community. The voices are not there, not coming out to support the activities of the task force, also the essence of fighting or holding on, containing the COVID. Generally, it looks like the country has relaxed in so many ways, even in adhering to the basic preventative recommendations. And given the plethora of disinformation that has overwhelmed the world, it's increasingly more dangerous, given what we're seeing, and even responses of people that should know better. But even when I speak to even people in health, the tendency is to play down the impact of the COVID or the presence of COVID. It's already there. We have to live with it. That's what all of us are doing, learning to live with it. And there's every need, one, to use the opportunity to, again, because part of it's primarily a health and a public health issue and crisis. And it's an opportunity to leverage and build on what we have.
We can't, what we have is what we have. But then we have to now at least recognize our shortfalls and work to build on them. The labs we have, you've mentioned the quality control aspect of it. How much is the organized scientific lab community working with you in that aspect? Because that's part of the ethical elements that make people to conform. So it would be nice to see, use the opportunity to want to, again, enhance health and science issues, involve more of our university system and the Academy of Science, and particularly the organized medicine. They have to help, they have to speak up. I don't know how much integrated you are with them. And there's an organized hospital system or hospital organization, association in Nigeria. And more people go to those hospitals and to the site clinics. There ought to be some level of visible integration with the activities. That's an element that. Then we also need to, with the task force in hand, but please, this is very, very important. We have to be able to task ourselves to get a vaccine production platform. We did that in the past, in the yellow fever days, that created the Yaba lab. So that platform needs to be resurrected. And I think a task force, I know the government through the central bank has already done something, but there has to be something specific. You know, let the government charge the scientific community to with the manufacturers to give us a platform, so we can't continue to just wait for donors to supply us. So at least we've met some of their needs in counter. You know, in the counter payments, we've been able to correct. You know, which you did through in your former effort. So we need such challenges, and the task force is really in a good position to do that, working with the scientific community, so that we don't lose this chance. We don't lose this chance of you know, reviving some of the stuff we have on ground. It's just to revive them. Thank you very much, and thanks for the effort and what you're doing. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. I think we basically touched on all the questions. Somebody is asking, what was it I listed here? Sorry.
Yeah, so.
When will can you have these private laboratories at the airport? And then when will,
okay.
Is there a plan to have at the airport? And then when will this move to every state of the federation? So that when you travel to Lagos, you can get your test done in other states.
Indeed. So even now, if you arrive Lagos or Abuja, you're still allowed to go to your place of residence, provided you have paid. It's the onus is on the private lab to make sure that your sample is collected, because all we need is sample collection. As I said, we're just about putting up 6 additional states now on the portal. And what we said to the private labs that are currently working with us, there are 11 in Lagos, about 7 in Abuja. We've just opened 1 in Kano, is that we want them to open up sample collection centers across all the 36 states. And it's not difficult, because all you need is a sample, somebody who can take a sample. And it could as well be just an individual, and they pay him maybe 500 naira per person, and that person will collect the sample, put it, pack it, and post it to wherever the lab is. So we're going to give them a time frame to do this. If they do not open up sample collection centers, we will penalize them by taking away. We've accommodated about 4,000 naira, I think, also of their charges to deal with the logistics of having to have passengers outside Abuja. And if they do not open the sample collection centers, we will drop the current charges they are having to that respect. There were a few issues that I wanted to quickly go through. So, okay, you asked a very good question. Why are we not testing at the airport? So as I explained, If you do a test very close to the point of departure, it will reflect your result when you arrive Nigeria. If I test somebody who has done a test very close to the point of departure within 72 hours, and I test him on arrival, if he's incubating COVID, the likelihood is we will only pick about 7%, less than 10% of those that are incubating. It's too early to test at the airport. So there's no benefit of doing testing at the airport if you have a pre-boarding test. It's onerous, it will be exploitative, it will be unnecessary, it doesn't give you additional yield. However, if you do not test pre-boarding, yes, you can do a test on arrival, but the airlines are the ones that are also pushing that they want their passengers to be non-infectious. So they prefer clean passengers boarding the flights. And I understand that too, because if, let's say, out of 10, 2 would have been infectious, they come over to Nigeria, those 2 would have been excluded right from the beginning. They wouldn't even be allowed to board because they have a positive result. So that's why. The second thing is, even if we were to do testing at the airport on arrival, you will still need to do it at day 7 onwards, because there will be people who would be incubating. So that means you will still need at least a two test method to be very certain. For countries that can enforce isolation, and that's what I keep on saying, the issue is enforcing self-isolation. If we can enforce self-isolation, then you don't need to do that second test, because you come in, you have a negative test, you stay away from everybody for 14 days, you're fine, end of story. We're not interested in testing. But unfortunately, we don't have that luxury, Abike. And we know from the results we have that about 3.4% of those that come in with negative results will seroconvert and become positive. And if you're looking at 5,000 to 7,000 passengers, that's a huge number. It's a huge number. It's up to 150 to 200 persons every day. And Lagos at the moment, they are recording 20 to 30 new cases every day. You bring in 200 positives for them. Do you think they will sit down and accept it? No, they wouldn't. And then it becomes an issue of, should we close the airports? And I'm sure none of us would want the airports to close again. So that's why we're taking the decisions that we are. One of the things that Tony mentioned is that our relationship with the academic community and also the diaspora. And a lot of people don't realize we have a large technical team that work behind us within the PTF. And to me, this is the first time that people in the diaspora have actually influenced major policy decisions in government. And that's why some of the decisions we continue to take are sound and very much reflect what is going on in the international community. Some of our policies are no different to what you will find in the UK. Even the UK, they were looking at doing a second testing and reducing their quarantine period. But because they had a lot of elderly people, SAG decided not to do that. But the very same team that are advising the UK government are the very same team that also advises from a technical aspect in the PTF in terms of decisions to do with the science. There was a question about when will Port Harcourt, Enugu open? So it's one of the reasons why we're trying to open up more and more sample collection centers. We're very keen that the airports start operating. They've lost a lot of money, and unless we can get them to become fully operational, there will be job losses. So we're working on that. As soon as we have enough sample collection centers across the country, and we are confident that we have enough capacity for the labs to test, we will open up Port Harcourt, Enugu, and Kano. I'm sure it will be in the coming weeks, but very soon. In terms of, there was a question about deportees. Yes, we have exempted certain groups from payment. Diplomats, because we had to. Children below the age of 10 do not need testing. You shouldn't pay. And if you do mistakenly, please let us know and we will refund you your money. Deportees, girls that have been trafficked, etc. Anybody who did not pay for his ticket, another state paid for his or her ticket to bring them to Nigeria, they will not be subjected to payment for the test. We will test them under the public health laboratory system. And I've addressed the issue of having tests, and yes, all state capitals having testing. Thank you. Over to you, Abike.
I think we've virtually addressed all the issues. And if there are any more questions, please send to us, admin@nidcom.gov.ng. We will answer your questions through the PTF. And then we'll also work with you in terms of maybe the video Bob Olukoya suggested, the 90 seconds video. They will use all our platforms. And people have said this has been very informative from comments here, and they want it uploaded on several social media platforms, which we will do, working with the PTF. Thank you very much. I think on that note, I will call on Habibat. Let's have a woman give a vote of thanks. And then somebody says, those traveling from Nigeria, must they do the test before they leave? Maybe you just answer that. Is it compulsory?
Yes, so no. So in fact, that's something that we are very keen to put out. It's the responsibility of the passenger to find out the country you're traveling to, do they need a test? If they don't need a test, don't waste your money. If you're going to the UK, you don't need a test. So find out from the embassy, find out from the airlines. If you do not need a test when you're exiting Nigeria, you don't have to. You don't have to, because they have other systems for making sure that they are safe.
Okay, so thank you. I'll call on Adiza to give a formal vote of thanks, but our Nidcom staff here are saying that the video will be available on Nidcom website on all our social media platforms. So that will be our contribution to information sharing. So thank you very much. Habiba, your final.
Hello, good afternoon. And I'm Habiba Teluame from Nidcom. I want to say that I've really enjoyed this program. I want to say thank you to the hosts, Honorable Abike Dabiri-Erewa, the chairman CEO of Nidcom, alias Mama Diaspora. And I want to say thank you to Dr. Sanni Aliu for all his explanations and responses to the questions. We've seen that all hands have been on deck, working hard to ensure that Nigeria is safe. We want to thank you, Mr. Obinna, and your technical crew for putting all this together. We want to say that a lot has been going on, except for the video clip that went viral. And just one single video clip wants to negate all efforts put together by PTF and government. But I'm happy that Dr. Sanni had responded to all the questions, and I please want the diaspora to know that they are always welcome home, because that man said he will not come to Nigeria again. So please, he will understand the problem that's caused his own problem. And I'm happy with the customer care center that will attend to people, the chat system, the email, so that if they don't pick up their calls, at least they can respond to emails. So we want to say thank you very much for this program. And I want to say thank you, Mama Diaspora. You are always there to listen to all diaspora and even the Nigerian citizen. I want to say thank you very, very much. I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
And
see you all. For those questions coming on the chat, those who say you want to reach us, I've given you the email admin@nidcom.gov.ng. Just send us your email and we will take all the feedback on board. Once again, thank you, Dr. Aliu, and thank you everybody for participating. See you again and travel home. Thank you.
Thank you, Abike. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.